You know what? I'll say this. I've been sitting here since about, let's say, October, waiting for us to do our best. I've never left the streaming garage. I've been here for like 5 months. This is Mark Heiser along with
Wade Major.
And we are here to do our best of 2011. This is it, Wade. Ooh. Look at the graphic and everything.
I know.
It can't be a best of without Corey's graphics. By the way, Corey, it's his birthday today. It's his birthday.
Happy birthday.
And you know what?
22 years old.
To celebrate Corey's birthday, what you need to do right now is hit subscribe.
Yeah.
I worked that in.
Right now.
I did not sign up for this.
We will not start the show till you hit subscribe on YouTube. Okay, we'll start the show now.
All right, here's what's going to happen. There's this show, which is the best of 2011. And then, don't forget to watch the worst of 2011, which is a lot longer.
Because
there's so many bad...
There's an annotation right now that says worst of, and you hit that annotation. Go ahead, keep talking. Don't worry about it.
Hit subscribe. That's all. I was told to hit subscribe. That's all. Otherwise, I got no idea what's going on.
Good point. Good point.
What I'm saying is that there's the best of show. Please watch this right now. And then the worst of show is on a separate file, a separate download. Please watch that too. Because Wade and I have a lot of opinions.
Strong opinions.
Strong opinions.
Strong opinions.
About this movie here. So there's a lot of bad films this year. So check that out.
Oh, yeah, a lot of bad films.
But a lot of good films too.
A lot of good films.
The thing is that
not a lot of great films, but a handful of great films.
Yes, and you've really got to dig deep to get to those great films.
Yeah,
because
we'll
again,
be digging.
You know what? I guarantee that of the 10 films, we're going to, maybe about 7, 8 films, because some of ours overlap. We'll talk about. You've heard of maybe a few, but they're great rental suggestions.
Or some of them still in theaters. Absolutely, go see them.
That is true.
Yeah.
So let's start right now with my number 5.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
My number 5 is a film called The Arbor. And The Arbor is a documentary which was created by Mike Rodman.
That was not created by me. But thank you for loving my film, which I did not create. Hold on, we'll try it again. There we go.
The Arbor.
Hey.
There it is.
Not created by Mike Rodman.
Oh.
So this is an amazing documentary. This is what it's about. Andrea Dunbar was a British playwright in the 70s. And when she was 15 years old, she started writing this play called The Arbor, which is all about her horrible upbringing in this housing project in Yorkshire. Now, when Andrea Dunbar was 29 years old, she literally just dropped dead of a cerebral hemorrhage in a bar. And she had a horrible life.
I hate it when that happens.
You know what? It happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
She was a drunk. She was beaten up by various boyfriends. She had 3 children by 3 different fathers. So she really had quite a tragic life. And The Arbor is not just her story, but the story of the 3 kids. And what's amazing about The Arbor, and what just completely makes it totally fascinating and one of the best films of the year, is the way the director Cleo Bernard puts the scene together. Bernard uses a technique called verbatim theater. What Bernard does is she interviews. Is it she or a he?
I don't know.
What it does is.
You like this film better than I do.
What it does is Bernard interviews all the surviving family members, gets them all on tape, but doesn't use the video of the actors. What Bernard does is actually hires actors to lip sync the audio from those interviews. So you get these, let's say these 3 actresses playing the daughters. They're put into the actual Arbor, into the actual housing project in Yorkshire. They go to the theater where her plays were performed. They go into the home where she used to live. And these actors lip sync all the dialogue from these real life interviews. And it's a very haunting, interesting way to present this information. And it just makes it great. And what's particularly amazing about the story is not just Andrea Dunbar, who died at 29. But all the kids are pretty messed up. And there's one woman, one daughter, her name is Lorraine. She's played by Manjinder Virk, and she's just great. She plays the daughter who is sort of the most, she's the most damaged from her mother. It turns out that she is a drug addict, and she's also had 3 kids by 3 different men, and she's already spent time in jail for prostitution, which she used to supply her drug habit. So she's had a horribly tragic life, but she's played by this actress who lip syncs all this interview dialogue, and it's just an amazing way to present this material, and I thought that The Arbor was just great. I loved it.
Yeah, I didn't love it so much. I thought that was really pretentious. But that's okay. A lot of people love it. Look, I readily admit it's interesting, but, you know, the lip-syncing thing didn't work for me.
Really?
No, I found it irritating.
Did you not find interesting that just, if nothing else, just the legacy of parental neglect and all. Yes.
If someone's been interviewed, I want to see the person who's been interviewed. I don't want to hear their words lip-synced by some actor with the flaming bed in the background and all this kind of neo-avant-garde stuff. It's disruptive to me. It's kind of it's the filmmaker interfering with the natural documentary process. So never mind.
Look, basically, to me, if Ken Loach were to make a documentary, it would be this. Ken Loach.
That's wonderful. That's terrific.
By the way, hit subscribe.
Hit subscribe. All right, moving on. My number 5 film.
I hate it. Whatever it is, I'm going to hate it.
My number 5 film is City of Life and Death, a Chinese film from Liu Yuan. Liu Yuan had this film in the running to possibly be the Chinese submission for the Academy Award a couple of years ago, and the government passed on it, and they went with another film that turned out to not even come close to getting a nomination, screwed up the whole thing, a lot of controversy about it. So this year, they have put forward a film about the same subject matter, Flowers of War, by Zhang Yimou and starring Christian Bale, which is about the same subject. So there's a really interesting dichotomy going on here between these two films being released in the same year in the United States, both dealing with the rape of Nanjing, or the rape of Nanking. Either way, it's the same city. In 1937, long before World War II really heated up in Europe, it was already going on in Asia. The Japanese had already invaded China, and they finally broke down the defenses of the capital of China at the time, the Republic capital of China, which was the city of Nanjing. And over the course of about 6 weeks, of the 600,000 people still living in the city, 300,000 of them were murdered, including about 150,000 women who were raped repeatedly. It is one of the great atrocities of all history, considered the greatest single atrocity in the history of World War II. The Holocaust being an overall atrocity, but this one incident, more people died, more people were brutalized than in any other single incident in all of World War II. The City of Life and Death is a black and white, anamorphic widescreen recreation of the key dramatic events of that particular event. Unlike Flowers of War, which is a more intimate story with Christian Bale playing an American who masquerades as a priest in order to save the lives of certain women, this is a more epic, sprawling tapestry that tries to piece together all of the events in the lives of real characters. And it is one of the most difficult films to watch you will ever see, but I would put it easily on par with something like Schindler's List in terms of a film that gets to the root and the essence of what it means to be a victim in one of the great atrocities of all time. City of Life and Death, an extraordinary film, incredibly hard to watch, but highly recommended.
I agree. Could not agree more. Now, I was going to disagree because you didn't like my number 5.
That's okay.
And I was going to be petty.
Go ahead.
But I decided not to.
Rock
I'm going to
on.
agree with you. It's
Rock
great
on.
stuff. Very difficult.
It's a brutal film,
but it's
great.
brutal, but it's brilliant. My number 4 is a brain tickler from Iranian director Abbas Kiarostami. By the way, 2 of my films are from Iranian directors. You know why? Because I hate America. That's why. And I want terrorists to win.
There you go.
In case Sean Hannity's listening, maybe he'll friend me. Sean Hannity will friend me.
Unsubscribe.
Anyway, Certified Copy. It's a terrific film that sort of takes you by the hand and guides you on this abstract, fascinating journey that's sort of like, it's like the difference between originality and fakery and copies. And here's how it works. Juliette Binoche plays an antique shop owner who is in Tuscany to hear a book lecture. And the guy who wrote the book is this British author played by a terrific actor who had never acted before. He was an opera singer. And this is his first film, this guy William Schimmel. And his new book is called Certified Copy, which argues that reproductions are just as valuable, if not more valuable, than originals. And so Juliette Binoche comes to Tuscany to hear this lecture. She obviously fancies him. She thinks he's attractive, wants to get to know him better. So it turns out that they do wind up spending the day driving through Tuscany and talking about their various theories on life and love, based on the general idea of his book, which is that originality sometimes can be eclipsed by reproductions or copies of reality. And it sounds very abstract, but what Kiarostami does is so interesting, because what happens is when you first meet them, you know that they're strangers. She's come to Tuscany to hear a book lecture from a guy she's always wanted to meet. Then what he does is, slowly over the course of the day, you start to wonder whether they really do know each other, because they start working out these scenarios improvising in their heads as if they really were husband and wife. And people in these Tuscan towns would start to treat them as if they were husband. Why not? They're talking like they're husband and wife. Maybe they are husband and wife. And so you don't really know. And you realize that in this really sly way, Kiarostami is almost, he's taking the thesis of this book and transferring it to this couple. And it's a real brain teaser because at the end, you don't even really necessarily know if they're a real couple or not, but you just love the haunting way. Now, Elaine has or care. Because just in the haunting way that this information is presented by Kiarostami, so interesting. And so certified copy, it's not necessarily an easy sit, it's a very conceptual sit, but it's just a terrific film. And Juliette Binoche is great, just going effortlessly from French
Always
to
great.
English. You know, she won the Best Actress Award at Cannes for this.
Yeah.
And Kiarostami is just a great filmmaker. He's one of the best. He's won the Palme d'Or.
However, yeah, in '97 actually, when I was, you know, but the thing is, you're not necessarily always on the Kiarostami bandwagon, which is why I think it's interesting that you love this film, and it's a great film, and Juliette Binoche is terrific in it. But you know, you should point out that what was it, 5 or 10 or one of those films? What that experimental?
Oh, that was
thing?
Kiarostami. Kiarostami did a film called 10,
Yeah, that's what it was.
and I saw it at
Same
Cannes.
year as a short film he did called 5, the same year, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I saw it at Cannes, and 10 is literally, I can't remember how many. There was like maybe 7 or 8, or maybe
Yeah.
9 or 10, maybe have even been 10. Uninterrupted 10-minute takes of
Stuff.
Literally, this is one of the takes. For 10 minutes, there is a stick, and the stick is washing up along the ocean.
See, that's the stuff you can do when you're a world-class filmmaker.
For 10 minutes.
You can get away with that.
For 10 effing minutes. And
So-
then it dissolves to a shot of a pier.
So
and
certified
there's-
copy, not this movie.
No. And there's a pier. And there's a bench on the pier for 10 effing minutes. And that's the movie. And when the movie was over, this is Kiarostami, who's a world-class filmmaker. And when the movie was over, everybody yelled Palme d'Or. Because they didn't know what the hell they just saw. What the hell was that? And so he can be very experimental, all over the top experimental. But certified copy is just terrific. And it's a great film, and you liked it too.
I did, very much. And now my number 4 film is Pedro Almodóvar's The Skin I Live In, which reunites Pedro Almodóvar with Antonio Banderas. Antonio Banderas wouldn't even have a career if not for Pedro Almodóvar. So this is really a historic reunion between the two. It is a film based on a novel for a change, not an original idea by Almodóvar, which most of his films tend to be. This is based on a novel called Tarantula by a French writer named Thierry Jonquet, which is not surprising because the story is very similar in many respects, very superficial respects, to kind of a classic French horror film, which, have you ever seen? The Eyes Without a Face?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Similar to that in some ways.
great, yeah,
Eyes Without
absolutely.
a Face. Famous French horror film from the 50s. Or late 40s. Was it late 40s?
Late
Might have been
40s.
Late 40s. Anyway, the story is almost impossible to explain, but suffice to say that Antonio Banderas is a medical professional, and there is a backstory to his profession and an experiment and people in his past. And if I'm sounding cryptic, let's just say the past eventually catches up with the present in a way that will blow your mind. It is a film that is both disturbing and incredibly romantic. Not quite a science fiction film, not quite not a science fiction film. It's almost like a cerebral alternative world. And it's a classic Almodóvar film. And a lot of people who love Almodóvar have not necessarily loved this film because it doesn't have his unique imprint on it. But it's based on a novel. And what he does here is he takes his style and he filters this French novel through his style, and it winds up being something completely remarkable, uniquely narrative, and in many ways almost poetically abstract. I think it's one of the best films of the year, far and away one of the most original films of the year, and highly, highly recommended.
It's definitely a departure for him.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that people were, as you say, people were a little taken by the fact that it's not typical Almodóvar.
Yeah.
You know, it's very modernist looking. You know, his stuff isn't always that modernist looking.
It feels, it's so hard to discuss the plot without giving anything away, because Everything that happens everything is a revelation.
Yes.
Everything is a revelation. Every plot turn is a revelation of something that came before it, and every one of them is surprising and kind of throws you for a loop and takes a left turn, and you don't know where the movie's going, and then you go back in time, and then you come back to the present, and you know even less where it's going, which is nice. It's refreshing to be that completely unmoored in a movie and to have no idea where it's going to take you.
Let's just say that the really hot girl in the tight leotard, who you see at the beginning of the film,
Yeah.
you may want to check yourself at the end when you realize what she's all about. Now you're saying, Mark, what are you talking about?
You'll see.
You'll see when you rent the film, because you really should. The skin I live in. Huh?
Is he a spoiler?
No.
No, he didn't.
If that's a spoiler, then...
That's not a spoiler.
No, that's about 1/10 of the movie.
All right.
If that. But it is a terrific film.
Persian Mark, carry on.
Anyway, my number 3 is a film that Wade had better like. Or there'll be trouble. Oh, come on. You love The Separation. What?
I'd love to be separated from you right now.
Did you not love A Separation?
Of course I like Separation. I just don't love it like everyone else loves it.
Oh, this film is great. It's, you know what? It's directed by Asghar Farhadi, and to me this film was just brilliant. All of Iranian society is represented in this one family, in this one film, but yet it's also very universal. In the film, a man who's married with a daughter, the man refuses to leave the country with the wife so the daughter can get a better life outside of Iran. The man refuses to leave with the wife and the daughter, so he doesn't want to leave Iran because he needs to care for his elderly father who has Alzheimer's. So that prompts a separation. So the wife and the daughter go off somewhere else in Iran, whereas the father stays home, hires a maid who will then take care of the elderly father. So the father and the maid have this conflict. Something happens that I will not tell you about. But when this happens, it sets off this powder keg of religious, social, class, justice complications in this family that is all done with such layers and so brilliantly by all the actors. It feels very intimate. It almost feels neo-realist in a sense, but it is just great because you get to see, not only are you slowly, you get to see a little bit about what Iranian society is about, but it's never judgmental about Iranian society. The director's Iranian. It's not necessarily good or bad. It's just, here is how it is, and this is what would happen if this situation arose. And so, you know what I'm talking about.
I did.
So you get a lot of interesting things, like, you know, you don't realize in the first scene, which is a great scene where the husband and the wife are arguing to camera about their central dilemma, which is that the wife wants to take the daughter and the husband out of Iran, and the husband won't allow it. It's just a 2-shot. It lasts about 7 minutes, uninterrupted take, and you only find out later that they're arguing in front of a judge because the judge needs to adjudicate this divorce decree, and whether he does or not is obviously part of the story. But there's such interesting stuff you learn about society where, you know, this maid who's from a lower caste as opposed to the husband and wife who are sort of more upper class, you know, the maid has to take care of this elderly guy who has Alzheimer's, and when the guy soils himself, as a maid, it's her job to take care of him. However, religiously, she cannot touch him. She cannot touch a strange man. So she actually has to call a Muslim hotline who will then advise her as to whether or not she can actually touch this elderly man and change him, because that's her job.
You need to keep that hotline number because that's going to be you one day.
Muslim?
Yeah, well, you know.
I'm converting.
There you go. I would call this is what I call a bureaucratic procedural, and there are a few of these films around, and The Death of Mr. Lazarescu is one of them. The Zhang Yimou we talked about earlier, he made a film called Story of Chuzhu years ago, which is similar in some regards, where you kind of get a tour of some massive top-heavy bureaucracy in one of these countries through these films, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Mr. Lazarescu, I know you and some others liked it. I thought that was just an oppressively awful movie. Police Adjective, another one of these Romanian procedurals, drove me crazy. This one I thought was very, very good. I don't think it's cinematically brilliant. I think it's extremely well written and acted, but it's a very good film. Wouldn't make my top 10 list, but it is very, very good.
See, I think the film is deceptively well shot. Most of it takes place in this apartment, and So what you need to do is, in order to sort of get a sense of who's getting the upper hand, who's in the lower class, who's in the upper class, Farhad winds up placing people in the frame that sort of tell you who's got the upper hand. Are they inside a doorway? Are they farther away from camera? They do a lot of that stuff, and I loved it all.
I don't disagree. I just don't know that I want to spend 90 minutes inside the Iranian divorce court system. But that's okay.
I do.
But Rusty, but you know what? I think they should have Iranian divorce court with Rusty the bailiff.
There you
and
go.
Judge Wapner.
Absolutely, that'd be wonderful. Wonderful. My number 3 film. It's raining. It's raining potpourri and confetti. My number 3 film is a French-Canadian film from director Denis Villeneuve called Incendies. Incendies is based on a play called Scorched, which was written by a Lebanese-Canadian named, and I'm going to mutilate this name, I know, Vajdi Mouad. Vajdi Mouad, something like that. My apologies for mispronouncing the name, but if you've never heard of Denis Villeneuve made a film some years ago called Maelstrom, which is one of the most aggressively surrealistic films ever to come out of Canada, which is saying something, because French-Canadian films, if you've ever seen anything like Leila, they can get very, very surreal. This basically had a talking fish narrating the story of a woman and her travails, and the very, very opening scene of the film is an abortion in detail set to Good Morning Starshine. This is what Denis Villeneuve does. So this is not a filmmaker who is afraid to shy away from doing things the unorthodox way. This, however, is very different from anything he's ever done before. Incendies was nominated for an Oscar, probably should have won, didn't, but it's now on Blu-ray and DVD, and you have to see it. It takes place in what we presume would be Lebanon, but it is never stated exactly what country it is. It is about the children of a woman who has just passed, who go back to the country that their mother came from, presumably Lebanon, to resolve a family mystery. And I won't give you any of the details. Again, this is one of those movies where you can't say too much about it without giving anything away. But you jump back and forth in time. The story of the mother, the story of the children trying to get to the bottom of this mystery, and exactly what ties the past and the present together. All of it set against the backdrop of what is presumably the Lebanese Civil War. If anyone remembers the war in Lebanon, especially as it was centered in Beirut in the 1980s, this was one of the most brutal and intensely fought urban wars of the 20th century. And it was primarily religious, although not entirely religious. And there are scenes in the film that intentionally shy away from specificity with respect to the people involved, but they suggest a certain degree of ethnic conflict, of religious conflict. And it's meant to be much more provocative than anything else, because ultimately it's about the characters. And it's meant to provide a provocative historical backdrop for what is a very, very personal family story that could be any family in any culture, any religion, any place and time, where there is a secret that you have to try and unravel that may or may not connect to who you are, your identity, and your own life in the present day. It is a powerful film. It is beautifully made. It is very sparsely shot in terms of dialogue and certain details, but it is one of the most powerful films you will see ever. It's too bad. Missed out. He missed out. He missed out.
I did miss out.
You did.
You know why?
Why?
Because
That's too bad. I'm going to make you watch it on Blu-ray.
What was this lesbian movie you saw?
the one with the fish.
I wasn't paying attention.
It's Chloe's birthday today, by the way.
Yes.
All right, so that's your number 3.
That was my number 3.
Now that means you only have 2 left.
Yes, but we share a number 2.
We do.
We have the same number 2.
And that number 2 is Wade Major?
Wade Major, it's my favorite movie.
Isn't it?
Wade
It's
Major,
great.
the motion picture.
That's a
Our
military.
joint number 2 film is Terrance Malick's Tree of Life, which quite possibly could have been my number 1 and almost was my number 1, if not for the fact that my number 1 beat it. Isn't that amazing? Who knew?
Now, Tree of Life is obviously Terrance Malick's confounding,
It is
epic story of everything that ever was and more.
And it won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival and was equally reviled and loved at the same time. People walked out of that screening saying, what was that piece of crap? And others said, oh, it's the greatest thing ever.
Well, you know, but this is what happens when you have a director, Terrance Malick, who essentially creates the film in the edit bay.
Yes.
I mean, he goes and shoots 1,000,000 feet of film, and then says, you know, I'm going to put together in the edit bay.
Yep.
And I think that's part of the reason why the Sean Penn character, that part of the film, isn't necessarily properly incorporated into the rest of the narrative, as much as I love the film.
There was a 6-hour cut, you know.
Yeah, you tell me how that is.
Okay. No, it's an extraordinary movie. I mean, leave it to Terrance Malick to say, I want to make a movie about the meaning of life. And let's incorporate the creation of the universe and a history of the world all the way to the present day, and then kind of contrast it microcosmically and macrocosmically with the story of this family in Austin, Texas in the 1950s, which is basically emblematic of my upbringing at the same time. I mean, it's very autobiographical, it's very existential, it's enormously ambitious. He wrote it back in the 70s, and it's taken him until now to be able to kind of put the resources together to make it. And it's astonishing. It's one of the most beautifully photographed films you will ever see. Emmanuel Lubezki just exceeding everything he's ever done before, which is already saying a lot because Children of Men is an amazing work. But really, it's a magnificent piece of poetry.
And by the way, the Blu-ray for this is top shelf.
Oh yeah.
If you rent this thing, don't rent the DVD, rent the Blu-ray, because you will absolutely be blown away. Put the lights down, turn up the speakers, and you will just be absolutely enthralled.
And a collection of classical music on the score, the soundtrack, that is just miraculous. I mean, it's all these unexpected cues in unexpected places.
You know, I was thinking too when, because there's obviously that sequence, it's about 15, 17 minutes that depicts the beginning of the universe set to classical music.
Yep.
It reminded me a little bit of the beginning of Melancholia. Now, Melancholia, you know, I saw Melancholia projected at a screening room, and they blasted the music at the beginning, and I thought, this is way too loud. What are they doing? And then you realize why they did it. You needed to just be completely just inundated. This movie, Melancholia, needed to come at you like a wave, and the music was part of that, and those great visuals. And it's interesting how those two films both used. You didn't like Melancholia?
I didn't know that melons could get cholera.
Have we started the show yet? Because, huh?
Okay.
That, by the way, was part of our worst stuff jokes of 2011, and we'll be playing that show later. Good night, everybody. Okay, so now it's time for our number ones.
Your number one.
Number one. Now, can I? Here's a brief little
soundboard. We need a soundboard.
Our next show. There'll be no next show.
Soundboard.
Emphasis on board.
There's one more show.
There is? Worst of show. That's coming up next, right after these words, on a very special family. Can I just tell you, when I
like a
Kristen McNichol,
who just came out
just came
20 years after everybody already knew.
Exactly.
She's Lebanese. Is that what happened?
Can I tell you, here's the thing. Wade and I, as you know, are part of the LA Film Critics Association. Now, we vote for our best film every year. And we have to name 3 films. Our favorite, our second
3, 2,
favorite,
1.
third favorite, 3, 2, 1 is the voting system. Now, traditionally, my number one is always a film that never wins. Because my number one is not necessarily the film that I thought was the best. It is the film that I had the strongest reaction to, positively. For the negative reactions, watch our worst of. But it always winds up being the film that I had the best positive reaction to. Like one year I voted for Children of Men.
Yes.
The only person in the group to vote Children of Men as the best picture of the year. One year I voted The Savages, which nobody even remembers. Savages is a great film, right?
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
Come on, get some.
Yeah.
Because I had a great reaction to it. Another year I voted A Simple Man.
Yeah.
The Coen Brothers film.
Which is a terrific
Which
movie.
I thought was like amazing.
Which has a lot in common with your number one this year, by the way.
That is true. So this year, my number one is Take Shelter. Take Shelter is a brilliant film by Jeff Nichols. Too late, Mike, on the drum roll.
They have the same ending, you realize that. Simple Man and Take Shelter. Basically the
A
same
little
ending.
bit, they do.
Yes, they
Ooh,
do,
I didn't even
yeah.
notice that. This is
Oh,
Wade. He
yes.
should host a show. Michael Shannon, who, if he's not nominated for an Oscar, I'm going to kill Wade. So there's a lot riding on it.
Please nominate him.
Michael Shannon plays a small-town husband and father. He lives in Ohio. His wife is played by Jessica Chastain. Their daughter is about 6 years old, and she is hearing impaired. And so Michael Shannon lives a decent middle-class life. Money is tight. The daughter, who is deaf, needs an operation to restore her hearing, so money is definitely tight in the family. And so he starts having these apocalyptic visions. He starts seeing clouds come overhead. He starts seeing flocks of black birds fly overhead. And these apocalyptic visions, he doesn't really know if he's seeing something that's going to happen in the future or whether it's all in his head. And so to keep these disturbances kind of at bay inside and not have to admit to them, he winds up building a shelter, an underground shelter in his backyard. And the consequences of him...
Not a baseball diamond?
No. That's
Okay.
another film.
Okay.
That's The Natural. No? Not The Natural.
Okay.
He builds a shelter in his backyard. Now, the consequences of him building the shelter, of course, are dire because shelters cost money, and his family thinks he's crazy. Kind of like Field of Dreams, where Amy Madigan thinks Kevin Costner is crazy. But the ramifications of this is just heartbreaking. And what is amazing about the film, what Jeff Nichols does is, I think, it has not even been remotely appreciated enough, which is he has a film where not only do you have to care about the family and you have to care about whether Michael Shannon gets through this, you also have to be constantly on alert and constantly wondering, is Michael Shannon crazy? Does he really see something that's going to happen? And if he does see something apocalyptic that's going to happen, what's going to happen? So it winds up being a family story with a kind of a mental health story, with a little bit of an apocalyptic story, and a small town story, and all this stuff is being juggled just beautifully, and the whole thing comes to this amazing conclusion, which a lot of people had problems with. And I've actually talked to a couple of members of LAFCA, and they said to me, what did you make of the ending? And I told them, and they kind of agreed that they thought that's kind of what it meant. And to me, the ending is devastating to me. And so the film really comes together well. Michael Shannon is so perfectly cast, and I'll tell you why. Because here you have a guy who might be mentally ill, he may be seeing the apocalypse, you just don't know. So if you cast somebody like, you know, Tom Hanks, somebody who when you see him, you already know he's not crazy because he's Tom Hanks, right? If you cast somebody like Michael Shannon, who's a little edgier, but still a great actor, he keeps you wondering. These visions, is he really seeing the future? Or is this really a manifestation of anxiety? He keeps you on that edge. So all this stuff comes together for just a brilliant film with just the great music, really well shot. Not a big budget, but the effects are still good. And I thought Take Shelter, in terms of how it hit me personally, just the anxiety that we live in our times, I thought that was the best film of 2011.
It's on my top 10. It's, not in the top half of my top 10, but it is in my top 10. It's a great film. And what I love about Nichols' direction is that it's economical direction, which we don't get anymore. But now that we have digital cameras and non-linear editing systems, we can shoot a ton of stuff and we can edit it a million different ways. And no one actually ever judiciously chooses their shots and very carefully puts them together and only cuts when they have to cut, and where everything is very economical and in its proper place. And he does that here, and it's very methodically put together. And I thought that was it exhibited an extremely astute aesthetic sensibility. So I think it's a great film, and I love that your top two films have Jessica Chastain basically playing the same part. I love that.
Jessica Chastain, who, by the way, I hope we'll be seeing at our LA Film Critics Association dinner.
Yes, on Friday.
Is she showing up?
As far as I know.
Who are you sitting next to? Oh no, this is the Oscar dinner, right? You always sit next to somebody at the Oscar dinner who then wins.
I watch
the Oscar dinner?
I watch the Oscars at
Who
home.
do you think we are? Well, I'm not going to the Oscars.
When's your dinner that whoever you sit next to wins the Oscar?
Oh, that ended last year.
Aha.
Yeah.
We had a good run. I had a run of 2 or 3 years. He had a run of like 4 years.
What dinner is that?
Huh?
But that's the LA Film Critic dinner.
Oh, okay.
The LA Film Critic dinner
that's the one coming up.
is on Friday.
Dinner anymore?
Okay.
No, they do, but it's, you know, I watch the Oscars.
Lunch now?
They can't afford it.
When I watch
Tough
the
economy.
Oscars, I'm sitting in home wearing pajamas with
wonder
feet.
what Wade's number one could be.
Can I just say, Wade, let me just say something. Wade's number one, by the way, it's a fantastic pick. It didn't make my top 5, but it did make my top 10. So I approve of the pick, if not its placement.
It was my number one.
No one
it's
cares
my
about
number
picks.
one, right on Rotman. My number one is The Artist. The Artist, thank you.
Mike
The
saw like
Artist.
5 movies last year.
I saw one.
But you know what? The Artist has been more or less. It didn't win a single thing from the LA Film Critics, which I don't understand. But it has won a plurality of all the other critics' awards. And
So you're saying the LA Film Critics are losers?
you know, we're contrarians, is what we are. But The Artist is, to my mind, not just the best film of this year. It might even be the best film of the last 10 years, and that is saying a lot. Here's what's amazing about The Artist. French director Michel Hazanavicius, who previously has only made 2 other films, the 2 OSS 117 spy films, also with Jean Dujardin, who stars in The Artist, which are, to my mind, the greatest spy spoofs ever made.
Hilarious.
They are
Each
hysterical.
one is hysterical.
They are brilliant. And he developed a reputation with these films for being an amazing stylistic mimic. He created 2 films that weren't just spoofs of the Sean Connery James Bond films. They looked as if they were made in the 1950s and 60s. The color stock, the costumes, the way they were shot, the camera angles, the editing, the music, everything evoked the era so completely, you would never have known that these movies were actually made, just in the last 10 years. With The Artist, he takes that to another level, and he's not doing it in the service of a comedy, he's doing it in the service of an homage, and it's an homage with a philosophical purpose. This is a silent film, a black and white film, a non-widescreen film that takes place during the period when silent films transitioned to sound, and suddenly a lot of actors found themselves on the cusp. Do I learn how to talk for the talkies? Do I have a voice for the talkies? Or is my career going to end now because I can't make that transition? That was discussed a little bit in Singin' in the Rain, and it's a little bit in a few other films, but it's never really been addressed in terms of how it's relevant today, because we face a huge technological hurdle today. Movies are evolving so quickly. You have things like 3D that are being tried out. You have motion capture. You have all of these devices that are all part and parcel of how are we going to transition the movies and whether even we should transition the movies to some new technological paradigm. And this is saying, let's strip it all away. Let's not just take away everything that we have been adding to the movies over the last 10 years. Let's take away everything they added on top of the movies since 1927. Take away widescreen, take away color, take away sound. What's left? A great story, great acting, great characterizations, the essence of what movies are, the essence that we have largely lost because we've convoluted the process so much over the last 80 years. And that's what this is about. It is getting back to the pure essence of cinematic magic. And it does it in a way that is so beautiful and so poetic and so touching that it makes us want more movies like this. It makes people who've never seen silent films want to see more silent films. And if that's what the legacy of this movie, bravo. Let's have more like it.
You know what? Oh, we got some applause.
Yeah.
Wade's number 1. My number 1 got Jack. Anyway, what I'm saying is,
Thank you.
You know why this film is so great? Because
it's incredible.
Because it has heart.
Ugh.
It's just, it feels so emotionally pure of heart, and it's almost like watching, The Wizard of Oz or some of these films back then that were drenched in.
And
yes, Wade?
Go on, drenched in.
I'm done, Wade.
No, drenched
Whatever.
in. Carry on.
Drenched in Caro syrup, like Hitchcock's blood in Psycho, Wade.
Go on, finish the thought.
I'm done.
Okay.
I thought you were going to say gravy.
Ooh, gravy.
Oh, now I'm hungry. What I was going to add was that what you get in this film that you don't get in regular Hollywood films. And this would never have been greenlit by a studio, by the way. No studio would ever have said, black and white, silent, what's crime?
Harvey Weinstein barely wanted to do it.
Go back.
Harvey Weinstein gave a speech at the Academy screening, which we were at, where he's like, everybody laughed at me.
But see, he saw himself in John Goodman, the John Goodman character the studio had.
That's
He
true.
saw himself in that character. And what this really taps into, that I think is even beyond the movie industry, is that sense of obsolescence, that we're all on this technological train, and if I don't learn Photoshop 27.12, I might not get my next job, and I'm suddenly going to be obsolete because technology is passing me by. And that hits everybody. It doesn't just hit the movie business. It hits like temp secretaries, and it hits people who can't work the new cash register, and you're a photographer.
TV executives, TV
thank
writers
you.
who aren't doing their own live streaming shows.
Like we are.
It hits everyone who feels as though obsolescence is now built into their life if they can't keep up. And that's meaningful right now, and that's a huge question.
Well, the hope is that, Harvey, who is as good a huckster as they come in terms of films, he can really get this thing out there. Obviously, he already has. You're hoping that mainstream audiences aren't scared of it. They don't think it's black and white. It's not widescreen. It's no sound. I'm going to freak out. The thing is that you've just got to, it's a movie that if you just give yourself over to it, it will win you over.
Oh, it
you have to
wins.
be willing to do that. You can't back into
within
it.
minutes.
Within minutes. You
Within
can't back
minutes.
into a film like The Artist.
It's magic.
So,
and it's going to win Best Picture. I'll tell you right
And
now.
we're live streaming, by the way, if you like The Artist and you happen to be in LA, we're live streaming a Q&A on Friday night for
Nice.
SAG, Streaming Garages for The
And
Artist.
I'm
with
going
all the,
on.
with
I'm
all the
going on the
filmmakers.
record. I'm going on the record. It's going to win Best Picture. It's going to win Best Director. It's going to be the darling of the Oscars.
do you really want to reward Harvey like that?
We rewarded him last year.
Yeah, that's true. The thing with Harvey is that as much as everybody hates him and calls him Harvey Scissorhands, on balance, I think he's done a lot for the movie industry.
Absolutely.
I really do, and,
Yep.
and I kind of hate to admit that.
He's
but
the only.
it is true.
He's the only one who has what the old moguls had.
He does. He's P.T. Barnum. He's Sam Goldwyn. He's all of them.
He's Jack Warner. He's Louis B. Mayer. He is that guy.
I just wish that he respected the filmmaker all the time, and not just
But
when
even
it's...
those guys didn't.
Huh?
Even those guys didn't.
Yeah, fine. All right, so
There it is.
Wade, that's
That's it.
our best of 2011.
Go get some. Go see it.
Now, some of these films are on Blu-ray. Some of these films are still in theaters.
Yeah.
And we invite you to watch them all, and then go on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Recommend them to your friends. These are all terrific films. By the way, hit subscribe. I have to say that one more time.
Hit the share
here.
button
Where's
if you're
the button?
watching.
What is the share button
You
over
should
here?
be sharing this video right
Now,
now.
when you say share, is it like Sonny and Share, or is it like another
Yeah.
Sonny share?
I know you don't know the internet, but you share a video and then it goes to your
right.
social media outlets.
Didn't see it. That's me and the internet. All right, so that's the best of 2011, everybody. I want to thank the best crew in the history of the internet. It's Corey's birthday, everybody. Come on.
How good are we? How good are we? We may be hired by Brad Pitt.
That's it.
Oh,
We
Mike's
may,
going
we
to
may be,
plug
we may be
something?
live streaming a Brad Pitt Oscar thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
He's in Tree of Life.
Right? I think it's for the baseball one. I think it's for
Moneyball.
It's for Moneyball.
Yeah.
That's on my top 10 too.
Yeah, Moneyball's up there. Yeah, right. Moneyball should have been there maybe.
Yeah.
I saw Moneyball too. I like The Artist better. Ha!
Ha.
There's two
you know
movies
what?
I've seen this year.
Can I
Both on my top
what?
10.
There you go. All right, end it up.
Okay. Anyway, that's the best of 2011, everybody. Thank you to the crew. Thank you for watching. Hit subscribe, whatever that means. And don't forget to check out our worst of 2011. Good night.